Okay. So I think we're live. Can anyone give me a thumbs up? Oh yeah, I can see the chat. I think we're live. Okay, let me just quickly test the sound. Okay, I think it's working. Let's give it another minute. For people to tune in. And hello and welcome to everyone who's joining the stream. My apologies in advance for the background. I try to do as good of a work as possible, considering I was not planning on streaming anytime soon, or at least within a day. So let me know if there's any issues with sound quality or volume quality, and I'll try to adjust, because I'm a little new to this, but hopefully we can figure this out. And in the meantime, you can start putting your questions in the chat box. Don't forget to give this video a like. I would highly appreciate that. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. If you'd like to pitch in a couple bucks on the super chat, that would be great, but don't feel obligated to. This stream is dedicated to spending a little bit of time and giving back to all my awesome subscribers, considering a lot of you are probably stuck in your home, unfortunately. So with that being said, I'll post the link right now in the chat with a Google Drive link, which will allow you to download some free exercises. So I'll make this link valid for the duration of the live stream, so don't forget to download. If this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll put a link so you can download one of the pieces with the backing tracks, one of my original compositions, which is My War, for free. So give this video a thumbs up, and if it gets 1,000 likes through this stream, I'll put a free link to download for that. In the meantime, let me quickly put a link to the exercises. Sign to chat. Oh my god, I'm not good at this. Okay. Say something. Okay, I think we got it. Let me see if that works. Yeah, I just removed it. I think that was not a good attempt. Okay. Okay. This should work better. Okay, so check the link and you can download some of the range exercises and some of the vibrato exercises for free. Let me just quickly scroll through the chat and see what we got here. Sean Morris says hi. Hello, Sean. Nils Peter says hello from Germany. Hello, Nils. Dylan, hi. Well, hi. Well, exactly. Wasn't exactly dedicated to me, I guess. John Disson says hola. Hola to you, my friend. Okay, Nick Rugo. I have a really cheap, dented, and overall bad euphonium. Is this affecting my high range? I try to practice every day, but I still can get above like an F or F sharp. So euphonium will definitely affect your range, but F is definitely not the range where I would consider a limit of even a lower level euphonium, if that makes sense. So again, it depends. I've seen some really poor ones. I don't know whether you can see the low euphonium at the back. This is probably as bad as it gets, and I can still definitely squeeze out something higher than concert F or F sharp. Actually, let's try it just for fun. Oh yeah. So this is probably as bad as euphonium gets. Well, I don't want to say as bad. There's probably you can dent it and make it worse. But this is like a $400, $300 euphonium. I don't even know exactly where it's coming from. I think we got it for free for one of our youth program. It's not great, but it's definitely sufficient for a kid who's just beginning. And also it's smaller than a regular euphonium. So for a kid who's 7 or 8 year old, it'll be a little bit easier to handle. But as you can see, even if it's not the greatest euphonium, you can still get some good high register as long as the skill is there. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but I would highly doubt that F or F sharp is the limit of your instrument. Okay. Okay, let's go to some more questions. Tyler says, hi. When's this gonna start? It should start right now. Korean, hello from Korea. Hi. Okay. Like above 4 line. Hi. Hello. Bad webcam, but it's alright. Yeah, it's not the greatest webcam. I'm using my laptop's camera. I'm trying to compensate it a little bit with a lighting kit, but again, I didn't have a chance. I've got a DSLR in the back, which I normally use for recording, but it requires an HDMI switch, which I don't have, and I didn't have time to prepare. But if you enjoy these live chats, I will eventually get one. Just depends on how many people will respond to live chats. Okay, hi, you live, great sound, thank you very much. Hi, how are you doing? I'm doing very well. Are you using a mouthpiece for high or low notes? I use mouthpiece for both high and low notes. It's essential to use mouthpiece when you play. I guess the question is, what mouthpiece am I using? Am I using different mouthpiece? I use the same mouthpiece. It's one of the Parker custom mouthpieces that I've made. It's right here. It's very similar to 5G51D, but I made it custom. There are some slightly different parts. I don't know whether those are exactly same for sale, but I'll try and find that information eventually. But that's the mouthpiece that I find easiest to play both high and low notes on. Perfect. Is that a plastic euphonium? No, in fact, that's a white lacquer. That's I believe this euphonium is made in India. I just recorded a video comparing very cheap euphonium and an expensive euphonium, so I will put the brand name. I cannot remember exactly what's the name of it, but it's definitely, as you can hear, it's not a plastic euphonium. It's just a white lacquer. I don't know what was the reasoning behind putting a white lacquer, but it's not great, to say at least. Sounds okay, but here only left channel. Okay, and that is a problem. I'm curious whether... Please let me know at the bottom if that still persists, because it should be by now. The sound should have been fixed because the live stream started. I'll be back. Sounds okay. Alternate fingerings. Can you help me with my tuning? I have a lot of trouble with tuning. I have a tuner though, thanks. Okay, so when it comes to tuning, there are two things that you need to consider. First of all, the equipment you're using. Second of all, your ability to hear and to adjust, and the physical nature of how you adjust to the pitch. Now, in regards to recognizing the sound, that's the skill you develop, and recognizing whether you're sharp or flat. And that's a little tricky, and it depends on the context. Whenever I play with the piano, it's not that hard. Normally the good rule is if it sounds slightly out of tune, you're probably a little sharp. If it sounds really badly out of tune, you're most likely flat. The way we perceive flatness is slightly different, and it's really bothering our ears most of the time. So if you're really out of tune, you're normally flat. Now, in terms of physicalities, you can adjust the pitch to a certain extent, and you're supposed to do just like a vocalist would adjust their pitch while singing. Now, it gets to the point where if you're playing in the band, the tuning becomes so off. What I do is I use alternate fingerings. That's what I normally do. So in my videos, you normally see me switch between a variety of combinations. So for example, I've got my concert A's, and sometimes I play them on 1-2. Sometimes I play them on free. Now, in the middle register, it does not really impact the intonation, but in the higher register, it's normally 1 and 2 is slightly sharper and free slightly flatter. So if I'm hearing that I'm slightly sharp, I don't want to be adjusting much with my embouchure at that register, at that specific register, because it's very high and you risk of splitting the note, especially there where you need to be really need to be centered. So I normally just switch to my alternate fingering, which is my free. Now, for example, my concert A's, I almost always use, almost exclusively use 4 instead of 2. So I find that 2, and I don't know whether that's specific to my playing, my setup, but almost all euphoniums I find, and with a lot of my students as well, I find that 2 on A's is always just a tiny bit flat. So 4 might be a little bit sharp, but I'd rather have slightly sharp than slightly flat, and it's always easier to lift things down than lift things up. So that's normally how I alternate. Now, also you would see me do the same thing with a concert E. So now 1 tends to be a sharp note on euphonium, and 1 and 3, it's just E flat. Sorry, my bad. 1 and 3 tends to be perfect in pitch, and again, it varies depending on what instruments you're playing. So just to give an example, so whenever I play in a brass band and I need to play a melody line with cornets, this instrument and original standard valve combinations work very well, because normally the cornets are a little sharp as well. Whenever I play with horns, that's when I need to start using a lot of alternate fingering, just because they tend to be a little bit more closer to the original pitch, and that's a lot to do with how the instruments are built. So even within certain sections you have to adjust. So there are 2 skills that you need to develop. First of all, recognizing when you're out of tune, and second one, it's recognizing the tendencies of your instrument. Now, recognizing whether you're out of tune, what you need to understand, whenever you sit in a big band, which is 40 players, 20 players, 30 players, and whenever you play, let's say in the back row, front row, the perception of the sound is very mixed, and it's hard to understand whether you're flat or sharp. You need to know your tendencies. So one thing you need to hear is if you're in tune or if you're not in tune. Now, that's where I start using alternate combinations. So sometimes you see me in a video play 1 bar of G's with 1 and 2, and very next bar I switch to 3 or vice versa. Just because if I hear that 1 and 2 is not exactly in tune, I normally know that 3 is probably going to be in tune. That note tends to be sharp. So you need to know certain tendencies. I know that my E flats, whenever I play with horns, it's 99.9% of the time I need to press 1 and 3 in order to be in tune. And if for some reason 1 is in tune with horns, I know that I'm tuned flat, so I need to push in my main slide. So it comes a lot with experience, but a good way to practice that would be using drones. and figuring out the tendencies of your instrument. Also, all the overtones, sometimes they make it harder to understand whether you're flat or sharp. So oftentimes you just, we have this little saying in River City, if it's out of tune, push it out. If it sounds worse, then push it in. You know, so it's I don't like to deduce it towards a guessing game, but sometimes you don't really have a chance to fully hear and understand all the sound coming from a variety of sections, whether you're sharp or flat. You just have to know your tendencies, and if one is not working, just switch to the other one straight away. Don't wait till the piece is finished. And oftentimes you're not gonna have a chance to pull out your main slide, so you're just gonna have to adjust the fingering. So that's how I would approach the tuning. And intonation is probably one of the most complicated skills to develop, and the tricky part with it, it also requires a lot of experience in putting yourself in different groups. And when you're a kid in a school, sometimes you don't have an opportunity to sit in all these variety of all these ensembles and different instruments. So that's a tricky one to learn, but this is how I would approach it. And great question, by the way. Okay, what's the easiest way to improve high range? Having structure to your routine. That'll be. I know that's usually not a great answer, but range is something that comes with time. So there are a couple of aspects that come along when trying to improve your range, and you need to understand that I really don't like the question of how do you improve my range. I would rather approach it of how I improve my range, because it's basically strengthening your embouchure muscles and learning how to do more control through your tongue movement. Now let me explain this a little bit better. So in order to have control in your embouchure, your lips have to be flat. Now there are two ways we can flatten them out. You can flatten them out by using your facial muscles. Okay? If you have sufficient strength to keep this flat, you'll be able to free buzz. Now there's another way which we often use in order to keep our embouchure flat, which is this thing right here. And this is where the problem happens. You can shove the rim to your face and flatten your lips that way. Now the downside of that, the upside of that is you will need less musculature strength. The downside of that will be you'll be cutting your blood flow. So that's very unsustainable. You'll notice that within a minute or a couple minutes, the blood flow will be cut off, the lips will become flat, and they will not respond, they will not vibrate as well as you would like them to. Now, bear in mind, most of us, vast majority of us, do eventually apply more pressure than desired in certain ranges or certain circumstances. So a good way of practicing that would be strengthening your lips through exercises like free buzzing. So a lot of people cannot free buzz to start with. So a good way to structure your routine would be learn how to get 10 clean free buzzes every single day. So it might take you, let's say, 10 attempts to get one clean free buzz. So you would start with up until you get one clean. Don't focus on the pitch. Just get one clean free buzz. After that, get 9 more clean free buzzes, any pitch, whether it's higher, lower. Start learning this by using no tongue to start the note, so just air. Once you get good at it, once you get a full week where you can comfortably hit 10 clean free buzzes from the first or second try, start adding a little bit of pitches. So use drones, and normally a good starting note, and especially for trombone players, euphonium players, and even trumpeters. Trumpeters tend to buzz a little higher, but that'll be a concert F. So and from that note, try to develop some range. So keep a drone at F. and so on, up until you build scale. Once you have a full octave, then you can start adjusting, doing some cooler exercises and playing some melodies. But give it time. Just like any strength building exercises, whether you're going to gym and trying to get better at bench press, it's not about how much you can put in one day. It's more about the consistency throughout the time. So each day you miss out on your free buzzing, you miss on opportunity to strengthen your facial muscles, because you don't really know up until you're really, really experienced whether you're truly engaging your embouchure correctly through playing your euphonium, just because you have this cushion of a mouthpiece where you can push against off. Now, once you become a little bit stronger, it's very important to keep your aperture open. So the aperture is the space between your lips. Now that will vary between high-pitched instruments and lower-pitched instruments. So my apologies. So the higher the higher the pitch goes, the less gap you'll be able to open up, just because the mouthpiece size is a little smaller. And you cannot risk losing centering, and the centering is a little bit more narrow. Whereas with euphoniums, trombones, and tubas, you can get away with opening this a little bit more. So if your embouchure gives out, this is what's going to happen. Your bottom lip will slip under the top lip, and the gap between your lips will close, which will eventually shut your airstream, and you're not going to be able to produce any buzz. So by doing lip bending exercises, you'll learn how to control your aperture movement through jaw movement. You see how that space opens up? So if I'm doing an exercise, any lip bending exercise, so I'm trying to push my jaw down and out as I do it. That helps me to open up the aperture. Now, you're not going to be able to keep your aperture as open at the top, but the whole idea is learn how to control the space and eventually open this up. Now, listen to the difference in sound when I close my aperture versus when I open it up just a fraction. And when I say open up the aperture, I don't mean inches. I'm talking just a fraction. So if this is really tight, you see, if I just open that space a tiny bit, the sound completely changes. Closed, open. And that's the whole purpose of doing lip bending exercises. So you learn how to control the aperture. Now, how does that relate to the range? Whenever you go upstairs, it's very, very important to try and maintain that space. Okay, so I'm doing all the work with my tongue. My tongue goes, the back of my tongue is going up as I go up in the range. Now, if this is strong enough, you'll be able to hold on to that space without bottom lip slipping under. So this is the quality which is a little bit more like strength and endurance training, and you get that through doing exercises like lip bending, false tones, and also free buzzing. So these needs to be covered as one of a part of your high register. Now, another part is learning how to control the airspeed through your tongue movement. So as I mentioned, let's start off with the premise that the higher you play, the faster the air. The faster the air, the faster the lips vibrate. So, and vice versa when you go down. So it's a skill that can be practiced in both low register, because the lower you go, the slower the air, or the lower the tongue will have to sit. So it's not necessarily learning how to play high, it's learning how to control your tongue movement. So a good exercise would be one of the range exercises that I shared in the link in the chat that you can download for free. It'll be it gives you both bottom register and the top register. And the only way you'll be able to do that, and you don't need to do it in 3 or 4 octaves. You can do it in 1 octave to start with. But it gives you a nice bottom register, a nice comfortable note to start with, and you gradually go up. As you go up, you need to be thinking of vowels A, E. You see how the back of my tongue goes up when I say those vowels? A, E. Okay? Now, it is very important that the back of a tongue does not go too high. Otherwise, the tongue will reach the top of your mouth, and there will not be any space left for the air to run out, just like in the aperture. If it closes, there will not be any space for the air to escape, and the lips won't vibrate. So it is not actually hard to learn how to play in the top register quietly. It's harder to develop that projection, which is, again, where you need to keep the space between your mouth or the space in your aperture. So a good exercise would be chromatic scales, or one of those arpeggio exercises that I've shared. And again, be very, very conscious with how you structure it. It only counts, only the good quality sound, good quality feel. Not, if you're doing it correctly, the sensation you're supposed to be getting is almost free-flowing. If you're getting this, that means either this is closed, the tongue is blocking the air path, or something is cutting off the airflow, and that's where you're getting that very resistant sensation. So it's supposed to be a very free-flowing. See, no tension on my face, or minimal tension for that matter on my face. So it's a process, and a good approach would be not spending too much time in the higher register. Spend some, but focus on the low register. Learn how to become really, really sufficient at those bottom notes. The pedal register is just as uncomfortable in order to learn how to control, just because the airspeed is so slow, and you'll need to learn how to control that tongue movement. So this is a bit of a long answer, but hopefully that answers the question. Okay, check the link. That's my post. I have a question. There's times when I take a break from playing for a couple days, because when I start again, I feel like I've gotten better. Is that even possible? In a way, your muscles recover. Now, if you have a very strenuous routine, there's a good chance your facial muscles, like any muscles, will get damaged. Now, that's where, again, structuring your playing routine and learning your body a little bit better will become very important. So imagine if you go to the gym and you just had a couple of days off, and on Monday you go to the gym and go full on, full effort, max effort, and just completely empty your gas tank, just have a killer workout. And the next day you're all sore, and your flexibility will not be as great, your central nervous system will not function as well, so your performance might drop drastically. Now, if you train 2 or 3 days a week, which would be a kind of recreational way of training, not like a professional athlete who trains 2-3 times a day, that would be a good way to approach it. Whenever you go, put your max effort. Now, as a player, and considering that you want to take it up to a professional level, that's not a good idea. You need to plan and structure. So whatever you're doing, if taking a couple days off makes a significant improvement, that means you're recovering, which means you already damaged the facial muscle significantly. So you need to adjust your routine. Just put some of the exercises in the low register. Focus on good airflow, and try to not over pressure your lips, and not overstrain your face, and just be a little bit smarter with your practice routine. Now, again, it's a little tricky finding out what's a smart practice routine, but by now you know that in order for you to sustain that level, you need to take a couple of days off. So that means whatever you're practicing, you need to tone it down, particularly probably in the range, unless you practice 6, 7, 8 hours a day. So that would be my advice. I hope that helps. Just left a like. That's great. Hey, guess what? This year I made it to my region on euphonium for sure. Oh, that's great. Hey, guess what? This year I made it to my region on euphonium. It's my first time on euphonium. I got 7th chair, and they took 7 euphoniums, and he inspired me to try out euphonium. Well, thank you very much for kind words, my friends. My friend, I appreciate it. That's very nice of you. I'm glad that you find my videos useful. I do appreciate it. I really do. What are some ways to rebuild chops? Okay, so recovery work is very important. Whether again you're coming off a layoff or you did a couple of days of very strenuous practicing. So there are two things. Whenever you take a little bit of time off, the first thing that normally goes is your coordination, and in two particular areas. So that'll be fingers, and that'll be tongue. Now, tongue is the one that I'm really bothered most of the time. So if you lose your coordination with tongue, your tongue needs to get out of the way really quick. So whenever you start a note or whenever you articulate, it cannot be sloppy, because otherwise it will block the air path and you will get that resistant sensation. You will strain your face and it will cause, damage to your facial muscles and fatigue. So normally the first thing that I see, the two things, actually three things that I see in people who take bigger layoffs, like a week or even a couple of days off, will be they tend to get a little bit more shallow with the breath. So very short sippy breath instead of, and instead of clear attack, sometimes I hear them do that delay in the attack. So lack of coordination is one of the things that tends to happen first whenever you take a little bit of time off. So a good way to rebuild your chops is starting with some low free buzzing, low lip bending exercises without any tongue. Start your notes with no tongue whatsoever. Start with the air only. That way you'll get your lips warmed up, and you're not gonna risk your face being strained by blockage of the air just because the tongue is not engaged yet. Once you're fully warmed up and you had a couple of exercises in, start doing a lot of low note articulation. Look for clarity in the front of a note. It's very important. And you're gonna get that clarity of the front of a note if the tongue motion is decreased, if it's flopping all over in your mouth. You're gonna get a nasty sound, and it's not gonna sound crisp. Articulated is gonna feel very resistant. So whenever you articulate with short range of motion, you're gonna get good flexibility, good response time, and a very free-flowing sensation. So start with exercises that will be in lower register with repeated groups of notes on one note. So by that I mean do 16/16th notes to start on B flat, concert B flat, or treble C, and then go gradually up the scale. And so on. Look for that consistency. So getting back, your tongue coordination will be very important. The next thing you could do is add chromatic scales for your finger coordination. So add some good chromatic scales with either half an octave, full octave, or even a couple of octaves in order to get that finger separation and coordination. And once you're there, start adding exercises that will coordinate your tongue and your finger movement. So again, a scaly pattern. Maybe major, minor scales, your call. Okay, once you're there, start adding a little bit of range. Now, don't be afraid to go high. What I would avoid, especially if you're recovering or come back after a layoff, is staying for a while in the high register. So always apply a free strike rule. And by free strike rule, I mean go to a certain note, it feels comfortable, go higher, feels comfortable, go higher. You start missing the notes. Give free attempts. If you fail all free attempts, do not go any higher. Go back to your middle register and just leave it for the next day. The chances that if you're gonna keep on repeating and missing, you're gonna strain and close your embouchure further, and that'll cause unwanted delay in your recovery. So that's how I would approach it. A lot of airflow exercises, a lot of coordination exercises, some high range exercises, but give it a little bit of time and it will come back pretty quickly. And good thing is the more years you play, the more seasoned you become, the easier it becomes to come back after a layoff or learn how to recover. Okay. How are you doing? I'm doing very well. Hello, big dog. Hello, my friend. Do you remember that video I made about fixing something? I've been trying to find that printouts for those who seem to find. Okay, do you remember that video you made about fixing thin, high school tone? I've been trying to find the printouts for those exercises, but I can't seem to find them. Now, they're available on patreon.com/Matonizz, just like all the exercises, for as low as $3. Now, here's the deal. If you're a kid in high school or you cannot afford it, which is a fair enough situation, just email me. I'll send it to you. Like, I made it super affordable. It takes me a lot of hours and a lot of effort to put those exercises on, and I try to make it as affordable as possible. But again, all of the equipment, everything costs money, so I try to generate a little bit to cover some of the expenses, and that's why I put that $3 ceiling on the practice or educational material. So you can get it with a subscription on patreon.com along with a bunch of other books, and I try to update that as regularly as possible. Each time the educational video comes out, all the educational materials are put for download there. So check it out, and you can get that book and all the other books for as low as $3 a month, and you can just buy out 1 month subscription if you don't feel like hanging on for second or third or whatever amount of months. You can always cancel subscription, and there will be no further payments taken. So that's where you find the book. Is that carbon fiber? I would assume you're talking about the euphonium. That would be a no. I'm dreaming of the white Christmas. How do you travel with baritone? How do you travel with baritone euphonium? Oh, that skipped. Oh my God, where am I? Where is it? Okay, found it. How do you travel with baritone euphonium? That's a really annoying one. So normally I have this special made box. No, I don't have it on hand. I keep it in my basement, so I cannot show it to you. There's a special made box which just fits the limit of what should be considered not an oversized bag, but they always put it towards the oversized just because it's a musical instrument, and it's a nightmare because we have to open it. There was one time whoever was checking literally unscrewed my trigger valve, took it and confiscated of euphonium. So imagine this: somebody had to take my euphonium out of the box, unscrew the trigger, and confiscate it for whatever reasons. And I just came into one of my Florida concerts, and I was like, something weird about my euphonium. Oh, there's a trigger missing. And I just found a little note saying that there was a surge done and whatever. So it can get very annoying and very uncomfortable. When I was in Europe and I lived in UK, and I used to commute to my home country in Lithuania, I used to sometimes buy an extra seat because sometimes it'll be cheaper just to buy an extra seat. And yeah, I just have a really good safe box, especially made for travel, and that's what I normally use nowadays. So I'll try and find it for next time. So if you remind me, I'll try and bring it towards to the live stream. Can you play a Sacred War? No clue what Sacred War you're talking about. If you send me a link to the piece, I might check it out. Hello friend, I am Colombian Euphonium, so I would like to know if there's any possibility of placing subtitles in Spanish to more videos than you upload. Okay, so I try to put as many subtitles as possible. It's really, really tricky and time consuming. So I will try and do. There are some videos that have Spanish subtitles, but in order to upload, I have to find a person who can actually speak in Spanish, because the phrases and the terminology I use for educational videos are so specific. I cannot rely on Google Translator. So I normally put an English text. You can always check the English text and translate that into Google Translator, but it's just ridiculous time consumption for me to find somebody who can word by word read a 30-minute text and then upload it. But that being said, I will try to upload it to more videos. I'm constantly trying to make it as good of an experience as possible for everyone watching. So yeah, I will try and do more Spanish translations if that's possible. What it's like reading some music in treble clef. So a lot of people probably still don't know treble clef is actually my primary clef. Well, I don't really have a primary clef anymore just because I've been reading so many different clefs. But in Europe, often they train euphoniums in B flat treble clef, and it comes from an amateur brass band movement, which a lot of euphoniums or good euphonium players originate from Great Britain. That's where the original brass band movement started. Now, I don't know why they train euphonium players in Europe specifically for B flat treble clef. My personal recommendation is to try and learn it in bass clef, because most of the jobs, professional jobs that you'll get, will put a bass clef on your music stand if you're a euphonium player, whether you're talking about military bands and even the professional brass band that I play. Vast majority of new works are bass clef. I'd say it's probably 60-40, 60% bass clef, 40% treble clef, and you get a bunch of other funny clefs once in a while. So the way I would normally approach it, I have a very funny way of reading bass clef, because, for example, the concert B flat, whenever you see it in a treble clef, it's written as a C. Now, my open, I see that as a C, whereas most American players or people who read concert pitch see that as a B flat. So whenever I look at the bass clef, I learn how to transpose it. So if you're seeing an F, I'm seeing a G. So what I would normally do is look at the clef signature, add 2 sharps or take away 2 flats, and then read everything at the step. So through doing a lot of arrangements and writing the exercises, I learned how to read all of them properly. But whenever I read piece of music, because sight reading is a vast part of my job nowadays, I always read it a step up, at least in my head, plus add 2 sharps. So, and whenever you convert from bass clef to treble clef, you do vice versa. So sometimes once in a while I would see an American player who reads a treble clef, and you know that that player probably started on a trumpet and then transferred to euphonium. But yeah, that's how I read it. So most of the European brass band music euphonium parts will be in treble clef. So learn both of them. Crucial. If you ever want to make it professionally, both of them. Super, super important. Treble in B flat and concert pitch bass clef. Super important. About how long does it take to learn vibrato varies on a person. Learning it, it's not complicated. You just need to get a little bit control of your jaw movement. So doing a wah 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 or yai 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 type of movement. Now, learning how to use it properly, that's slightly trickier, because it not only requires an ultimate control, so being able to add the width and the speed of your vibrato whenever you want it and however you want it, but also recognizing from your musical IQ standpoint what vibrato is appropriate in that specific circumstance, or maybe there's no vibrato needed in a specific circumstance. So whenever you play a melodic line, it's a good idea to add some vibrato. Whenever you're being a part of a harmony, please do not add vibrato. That's a terrible idea, and that's where a lot of euphonium players get a bad rep about using vibrato. It's just a lot of players develop one type of vibrato and it's just always either on or off, and that's a very poor approach, not very tasteful to listen to, and just makes it sound very unprofessional sometimes. So learn how to use variety of vibrato. You would sometimes hear me use vibrato from the get-go whenever I start a note, and sometimes add a little bit vibrato as I go. So for example, listen to that concert C. Da, da, da. I add vibrato as it goes on, and later on the last note of that phrase I played, I add vibrato from the get-go because I'm trying to build a little bit of intensity. So that's one of the way you can approach it. And again, it depends on your musical taste a lot, but it always requires you being in control of your speed and width. So practicing it with metronome, with varied rhythms would be a good idea. So start with a slow eighth note vibrato, then add triplets, 16 notes and 16 note triplets. So you're always in control. Practice that on different pitches and different metronome speeds to get a full control. So how long it takes will vary on how quickly you learn and how much time you practice. But it's not about learning how to do it. It's about learning how to control it and to use it appropriately. And that might take a little bit longer than you wish, but it's definitely worth it. That's what builds a very unique characteristic to your sound and to people recognizing your sound. Okay. Hey, just wanted to say I love your videos. Keep it up. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate that so very much. What brand is your youth? I currently use Jupiter XO. Do you have tips when learning bass clef? Played treble for 7 years. Yes. Pick pieces. A lot of times whenever you buy a solo that was originally written for euphonium, they send you both treble and bass clef version. Pick a piece that you already know. Again, this is how I approach it. Add 2 sharps and read it off the step. So if you see an F, you'll play that as a G. And add 2 sharps to whatever key signature you see, or take away 2 flats. Pick a piece that you already know well in treble clef, and then put a bass clef. So you know the piece, but that'll help you to recognize the notes in the bass clef a little bit better. Pick exercises that you know and put them in a bass clef. And overall, just more and more bass clef. The more bass clef you read, the better you get at it. But that'll be a good way to start. What are some good tips for having more air control? So it's not the... Okay, let me try and break it down. Air control, basically, this is what you need to know about the air. The amount you're taking and just how to control the air out. So a lot of people, they get a little bit of tension whenever they take a larger breath, just because there's a little bit more pressure. Just imagine like filling up a big balloon. Once you fill it up to its max, the air will be bursting out at the top before it reaches the very end, where you really need to even push it out to completely empty the balloon. Your lungs work in a very similar fashion. Now, there's 2 metrics that come in mind when we're talking about lungs, which is lung function and lung capacity. Lung function combines certain metrics. For example, the total amount of air your lungs can hold, how fast you can inhale, exhale, how fast you can put oxygen into your bloodstream, and how fast you can take away the carbon dioxide out of your bloodstream. Everyone is born, well, not born, but everyone has, you develop as you grow up, but a full adult has a certain lung function, and it cannot be improved. It can only go downwards because of certain respiratory illnesses or smoking or physical inactivity. So you cannot change your lung function. What you can change is your lung capacity, how much air you're utilizing. Now, there are a couple of aspects that come in mind when you're learning how to control or utilize your air. How fast are you taking your air in? Timing your air. So there's a certain, imagine if you're so the main muscle which controls your inhale is going to be a diaphragm. Now there's a certain set of accessory muscles like your upper chest, shoulders. So sometimes you see people take these breaths where you can see their shoulders lift up, and often you'll hear your band director, your teacher tell you not to lift your shoulders up. Now the better question would be is, how do I do that? And these are accessory muscles. So imagine you're doing a physical exercise like a bicep curl. You can swing the dumbbell and without do the same kind of exercise without even properly using your bicep, or you can do it in a very controlled motion. That requires certain speed, so you cannot swing it very fast. It has to be in a controlled fashion. The same thing with using your diaphragm. Now, diaphragm is not a voluntary, it's involuntary muscle. So that means you're going to use it no matter what. What is voluntary is how we eliminate the use of the accessory muscles. And that's going to be determined by the speed of your inhale. So there's a certain optimal speed of your inhale. If you try to inhale too fast, your shoulders will go up. If you're going to try and inhale too slow, you're going to miss a note because you're not going to have enough time. So there's a certain inhale speed that gives you comfort and that allows you to engage that pressure rather than resist it. Now, how do you know what's the correct inhale speed? A good way to find out would be using a device like this spirometer right here. So it's called Voldyne 5000, and that's normally what they use for people who recover from heart attacks or some sort of respiratory problems. But it gives you a couple of metrics. I don't know whether you can see. The lighting is not doing justice. Okay. So the column right here says best, better, good. So this will indicate how fast your inhale is, whereas this will indicate the total amount of the air you're taking. Now, whenever you breathe in, if this column shoots up, that means your inhale is too fast. If it stays within that best margin, that means the air inhale speed is optimal. So, and it will allow you to track how much air you take. And now if you try to take it very fast, that column will shoot up. Now, also what you will notice over time that, or whenever you start, that this little thing right here, which indicates the airspeed, might be very jerky in terms of how it's moving. Just like that. That means your inhale is very inconsistent, very tight. So you need to relax and learn how to inhale at a consistent airspeed. Okay, just like that. So this device, it costs like below $10. So you can find the link in the description box as well. I've got an affiliate link, or you can just do exercises by putting your metronome at 60 beats per minute and tracking your inhale count. So do 4 in, 4 out, 6 in, 6 out, 8 in, 4 out. I mean 4 in, 4 out, 6 in, 4 out, 8 in, 4 out. So you'll like this. Start with this. Then increase your inhale to 6 beats per minute. So you'll notice that the more counts you add, if you put 8 beats for inhale, 10 beats for inhale, you'll eventually have to slow down your inhale in order to take it. So eventually you'll be able to control and learn how to utilize fuller lung capacity by taking fuller breaths. So in order to take a fuller breath comfortably, you need to slow down your inhale to start with. Over time, you'll learn how to embrace that pressure that builds up here from your balloon or your lungs expanding, and you'll be able to take way faster breaths rather than okay. So that'll be a good way to start learning how to utilize your lung capacity. Hopefully that helps. Okay. What kind of mouthpiece do you use, or do you have any recommendations? Yes. So I use a Parker mouthpiece. It's custom made, but it's very similar to 5G51D. And this is the best mouthpiece. It's a little pricey, but that's the best mouthpiece I found for sound, clarity, range. The only downside would be the rim is a little sharp. So it might not be the most comfortable rim in comparison to flat Schilke rims or Bach rims, but it has the best combination by far of all the qualities in regards to clarity, range, resistance, response time. Now, it's a little pricey, as I mentioned. A good alternative would be any Dennis Wick or Schilke mouthpiece. A Schilke will have a little bit brighter, cleaner sound, which is going to be a little bit more appropriate for playing in larger ensembles in a group, so it will help your sound to blend a little bit better. Whereas Dennis Wick will be a slightly rounder, fuller sound, which will not going to be ideal for intonation purposes and projection purposes in larger ensembles, but it will help your sound to stand out a little bit in solo lines whenever you play a solo with a piano, let's say. So those will be two good starting affordable mouthpieces, but Parker is what I normally use. Okay, one of my patrons, Tom Kindred, says, Matonizz, I am a patron subscriber. We make great videos, but they are all on YouTube and Patreon. Why don't you organize all of it free or not under Patreon so we can look in one place? Well, the reason, and that might be a suggestion that I would do in the future, but the reason why I only upload certain videos on Patreon is because I only upload videos on Patreon that have downloadable content related to Patreon. So if that's an educational video that has downloadable materials, I will upload it on Patreon. If it's just a performance video where there's no downloadable materials, I don't want to upload all 300 or whatever videos it takes on Patreon, so later on my patrons cannot find the video they're looking for. It's going to make the search a very hard task. So that was the logic behind why I upload just certain videos on Patreon. So the Patreon will have all the videos that have a downloadable content only, and YouTube will have all the videos except for they don't have download links. So hopefully that answers the question. And yeah, I might upload some. I might find a better way to organize it. It's I've been trying to make it more organized on Patreon, where it's just one link, and I have eliminated all the Google Drive links and just put everything under a post. So I'll definitely look at improving that as much as possible. Okay, what brand is euphonium? Is Jupiter XO? How do you come up with your original compositions? Just basically, I don't know whether you noticed, but there's a guitar. You can probably see a little bit of guitar in the background. I play guitar, and normally I just play something. I find a nice, cool riff, and then I just write it down and just write a euphonium melody. And I used to play in a rock band when I was a kid, so a lot of these compositions are are just from old stuff that I used to play, just in better arrangements. So there's no specific composition process. I just whatever comes into my mind. If I feel like if a melody comes in my head, or if I hear a genre that I like, I'll sit down and write a line. Hi, do you know the anime sound euphonium? Well, it features a euphonium. That's cool. I believe that's a cartoon. I've never seen it, but I'll definitely check it out. What is the difference between your custom and the 5G51D? I honestly cannot even remember. I had it done quite a while ago. I know the particular specifics of my rim cup and the shank, but I don't think they just have it on the website for some reason. I'll have to figure that out. Okay. Have you ever heard of Derek Kane? Yes, I've heard of it. I know he's an American, I believe, a military band player. I've seen a couple of YouTube videos. I know he's a great American player. Hello, Matonizz. What is your favorite and accompanied euphonium solo? What would be a good one? Soliloquist would be a pretty good one. There's multiple ones. I cannot even remember composers. I have not been playing the most traditional euphonium repertoire in a long time. Most of the solos I play are brand new solos or arranged for me. So that's one of the privilege I get. But I have not played many unaccompanied pieces in a while. So, what euphonium solos do you like playing? Anything that that's a very broad answer. From the River City stuff, the stuff that I played with River City, Rockin' Man by Elton John, there was a very cool arrangement that I loved playing as a solo. Then there's a Transylvanian Lullaby. That's another one that I loved. And what else? Basically, I played Green Hill. That was pretty cool. I don't have specific favorite solos. I like the stuff I compose is the music I like to listen in free time. A lot of rock, EDM. So, but I listen to classical music. I basically just like playing euphonium. So whatever they give me, I always find it pretty exciting to play. Okay. What are the differences? You're amazing. Ever heard of their? Yeah, what euphoniums? Could you play Gabriel's oboe on euphonium? Yes, I could. I've played it a while ago. It's a pretty solo. Maybe I should make an arrangement for euphonium dread with my colleague. I noticed that you press down a gold lever with your thumb on your euphonium. What does that lever do? Well, the Jupiter euphonium that I currently use it does not have one, but that lever is called a trigger, and it's just basically a trigger for your main slide. When you push it, your main tuning slide comes out. So if you hear a sharp note, you push it in, and instead of using alternate fingerings, you can make the note less sharp. So it's just a tuning trigger. The sound quality is good, no problem. That's great. What are some alternative fingerings? Okay, so Sean Morris. I've seen this question asked multiple times now. So, okay, let me break down the ones that I use. So, oftentimes, some of the low Cs, I use 1-3 instead of 4. Now, the reason for that is some of the tubas tend to be sharp on that note sometimes. So if I'm playing a low line with tuba, sometimes I use 1 and 3. Once in a while, I would use 1 and 3 instead of open for my middle F. Again, once in a while, and that usually comes with tuning to tuba in that specific melody line. I often use 3 instead of 1 and 2 for my G's, as you have noticed, just because that tends to be a little sharp. I often use, and by the way, I'm talking in concert pitch, just keep in mind. I often use 4 for my middle C instead of 1, because 1 sometimes is flat, especially when I'm playing a line with cornets. I sometimes occasionally use 1 and 2 instead of open for my D's, because that can get a little bit flat. I would use 1 and 3 often for my E flats instead of 1s, because 1 tends to be sharp. Again, high G's often 3rd valve. A is almost exclusively 4 valve on vast majority that I've used, euphoniums that I used. I find better centering, I can push more air through, and better intonation. 2 tends to be flat. And whatever goes in super range, to be fair, valves for intonation does not matter all that much. It's more about which valve combination makes this super note a little bit more centered. So that's how I would approach it. Euphonium in B flat or C. It's a B flat instrument, but I read it in B flat treble or concert pitch C bass clef. Okay, hi. In Belgium, all euphonium sheet music and band parts are in B flat. I'd like to learn to read music that is written in concert pitch. I see 3 options. Now you have not listed the options, but yeah, most European euphonium players read in treble clef. Again, if you ever want to join a military band or a professional band, you need to learn how to use bass clef in concert pitch. 99% of the clefs you'll see as euphonium player will be a B flat treble or concert pitch bass. So those are 2 clefs you need to learn very, very sufficient at. What was the first song you played? It was, I believe, a Lithuanian tune, an old Lithuanian tune that I won my first competition, I think, at the age of maybe 8 or 9. It's just a little Lithuanian song that was a part of a competition that I played. Okay, hi, I've been playing trombone for a couple of years, and I would like to say I'm an alright player for a high schooler. I want to start playing euphonium for drum corps. Any tips for transitioning? So, outside of learning your valves, the big difference will be you'll notice that you can get away with not as good of a centering on euphonium, but at the same time, it's harder to control euphonium sound. So euphonium has a little bit more of back pressure than trombone. So doing slurs will be slightly easier on euphonium, but at the same time on euphonium you can push quite a bit of air. It does not necessarily result into better projection, but you can be a little bit more reckless with euphonium. But in terms of transitioning, the way I would think it, just whenever you play euphonium, just think of slightly warmer, slower air. I know the pitch is the same, but that's how I approach it. We're always looking for slightly darker, rounder sound. At least the traditional euphonium wisdom says that. So the way you would approach it, just keep this a little bit more relaxed and just move a very slow air with slightly more open aperture. That'll give you that traditional euphonium sound. Problem reaching high notes because I can't get sound, but I can consistently keep it up. I have a problem with reaching high notes because I can get the sound, but can't consistently keep it up. I have a problem with playing them loud as well. Okay, playing high and loud, that's where, so I've mentioned at the beginning of this video, playing high is not necessarily as complicated as long as you can control your tongue. Playing with good projection, that's where it becomes a little trickier. And there's no quick way of fixing that. You'll need to learn how to open this up in the higher register. And again, we're not talking about inches, we're talking about fractions. But that little fraction, millimeter of space, that'll open up the volume for the air, because the more air escapes, the louder it becomes. So you just need to keep your aperture a little bit more open. Again, you'll be able to do that by strengthening your musculature or your facial muscles by doing free buzzing, lip bending, false tones. Free best strength building exercises, period. Okay. Where are you originally from? Lithuania. It's a small Eastern European country. What do you think about Besson 2052, or in other words, Prestige, that you have in some concerts? It's one of, if not the best instrument for solo playing with piano. It's probably one of the worst instruments to play in a band. It has the richest sound in terms of the frequencies between the low frequencies, the sub bass 0 to 50 hertz and 50 to 150 has so many overtones. It almost seems like there's two instruments playing. So whenever you're in front of the band and you need to stand out, it has a very, very unique thick sound. Now the tricky part with it, intonation is very, very hard. Even when you're in tune, you're not exactly in tune. If you try and pick that instrument up and try to play with drones, even if your tuning device says that you're spot on, it will really sound that it's slightly off tune just because of all the overtones. So not a big fan of it playing in a band. And again, it depends what other instruments are, but it's just in River City where I play, everyone has a lot of Yamahas, a lot of Bachs, so it's just extremely tricky to blend, and that's where instruments like Jupiter and Yamahas, they excel big time. So, but it's a great instrument, a little overpriced, but it has some really, really good qualities. It's it's built with a great detail to design and mechanics, very, very smooth mechanics, and just a pretty thick sound, which works when you play with strings as an accompaniment, with piano. But if you're playing in a thick ensemble, my God, the intonation becomes a big, big problem. Okay. Have you ever marched? Yes, I'm definitely not the. I've never marched in any of the DCI bands, but I did some marching. Each year we do a couple of parades with River City where we march. But with all fairness, I'm not great at it. I experimented a little bit with marching horns just for fun of it. I actually contemplating using one marching euphonium or marching baritone for our jazz series, but never did. I might. Okay. Have you got your Sterling with you? Yes, I have. It's you see that black case at the top? That's my Sterling at the back. Again, it's a great instrument. There's certain reasons why I prefer Jupiter a little bit better, considering I play in a band a lot, and a lot of solo stuff that I play is with as a euphonium tuba duet, and just the sound of Jupiter just blends a little easier. Okay, what's the difference between trombone and euphonium approach? I answered that. What's the guy's name that sits beside you in all the concerts? Okay, so you're talking about Mike, and we're probably gonna try and do one of these streams together. We're trying to work this out. As you might be aware of the current situation, commuting is slightly tricky at the moment. So, but he's a fantastic player, great guy, and I'll definitely introduce him to one of the live streams soon. What are the differences between a free or 4-valve euphoniums and one with 4-valve and thumb trigger. So whenever you have a 3-valve euphonium, you always know that it's a non-compensating euphonium. Whenever you have the 4th valve on the side next to 3 valves, it's still non-compensating euphonium, but it allows you to go lower in the register. Whenever the 4th valve is on the side, if the extension, if the valve is longer than standard, it can be both non-compensating and compensating euphonium. So if you see, actually, let me show you what I mean by that. So pay attention to the length of the valve. It starts right here, finishes right here, and there's a 4th valve right at the side. Okay? So extension of this valve, of these 3 valves that go down, that means that the system is compensating. It's just basically help with the tuning in the bottom register. Come on. I'll have to put this down probably. Okay. If you have a non-compensating euphonium, see how short the tubing is. Okay, so it doesn't have that extra layer, extra tubing at the bottom, and it doesn't have the 4th valve on the side. That's a non-compensating free valve euphonium. So it's gonna have some problems with intonation on low note combinations, particularly that use 1 and 3, 1, 2, and 3. So that's the main difference between compensating and non-compensating system or euphoniums. And in regards to trigger, it's just basically a main tuning slide. I've already answered that. What are some good schools to get? Where are some good schools to get a master's degree for either conducting or music education, where I still want to possibly become really good at euphonium? Come and study with me at Duquesne University. That's a good school that has an educational program. I'm not sure about the conducting degree, but you can definitely do a music ed degree, and you'll be able to study with me and still do your playing, participate in ensembles, as well as potentially join groups, brass groups like River City or even symphony orchestras as a substitute players. Pittsburgh is a mecca for brass players. It's very, very busy. It's great for brass players. So Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, that would be one good. And I plugged myself as a teacher, so that's great. Obviously, Texas would be great. Indiana, Bloomington, that's a good school as well. So if we're talking, I would assume you're from USA based on your name. So those would be my suggestions. I play euphonium in a concert band, first division concert, and I think my range is quite good. My biggest issue is... Okay, how can you improve your tongue and speed? I play euphonium in a concert band in first division, concert division, and I think my range is quite good. My biggest issue is fast single tongue and double tongue. Can you give me any advice? Yes, I can. So the whole idea is you will increase your tongue speed by decreasing the range of motion it moves. Your tongue can flap around with a huge range of motion, or it can just move a little bit, okay? So the less range of motion you'll have, the faster the tongue will be able to move. You'll be able to develop not only speed, but also clarity. So the way you need to practice your speed is do different groups of singular notes. So practice, for example, 4 C's at one time really fast, even double C, 2 C's. I'll show you in a second to clarify what I mean. And fast practice longer groups like 16 notes, 16/16th notes at a time on one note to practice consistency at the same time. So let me show you what I mean. Put your metronome at a consistent speed. Oh boy. Not a good idea to put your euphoniums like that. I hope I didn't put a dent. No, we're good. Okay. Okay, so practice short groups, groups of 2 notes. Then learn how to do that with groups of 4 notes. Then learn how to do that in groups of 16 notes. Oh, that was more than 16 notes, but you get the idea. Then later on, start practicing your weak syllable for your multiple tonguing, like gas separately. So I would do the same approach: 2 notes, 4 notes, 16 notes. So I do ga 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 ga, and then you can start practicing your double and triple tonguing same way. Start with short groups and expand the group length as you get more adequate at your speed. Always do it with metronome. And so on. Same thing with triple tongue. And so on. Short, quick groups with metronome, expand the length of the groups, and later on expand even further. So we're practicing speed, clarity, consistency. And also start by practicing on one singular note. That'll eliminate you thinking about the valves, where you can focus on small, short range of motion. Later on, once you get really good at it, in order to squeeze in more workload into shorter amount of time, you can start adding some arpeggios. So instead of doing ta 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 ta, you do ta 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 ta, and so on. That's the way to approach it. And again, it will take a little bit of time, but you'll get there if you do that on a consistent basis. Okay. Have you ever marched? What kind of euphonium do you suggest? What kind of euphonium I do suggest is based on your budget. If you give me a budget, I'll be able to tell you my suggestions. Your audio is still only mono left, just so you know. Oh man. And I do not know why is that happening, but I appreciate you letting me know. I don't think I can fix that in this stream, but I'll try and solve that out, solve this issue for the next stream. So we're probably gonna go another 30 or so minutes. Where can I find the list? Which other valves I can push instead of the normal valves? Where you can find the list? Just Google alternative euphonium fingerings. That will be I'm sure there's I've seen charts. You just need to Google. This is in regards to alternative fingerings. If you want to find the list, Google it. I'm sure there's a chart. What would you recommend I do to help focus my aperture? Free buzzing, lip bending, false tones. Free, awesome exercises. Well, it's not exercises, it's a technique. Hello, what are good exercises for high range and just songs to play to get better with finger speed and other stuff? Well, that's a very broad question. How do you get good at the high register and good at everything? Let's start with high register. Good exercises, any scaly patterns, any arpeggio patterns that starts at a bottom note, goes up the top. This is so you learn how to do it through controlling airspeed rather than controlling the vibration of your lips through tightening this. Now, don't get me wrong. At the top, there's going to be a little bit more tension in your embouchure just in order for you to keep the lips flat. while moving faster air, your muscles have to be engaged a little bit more. So the tension will be higher, but you need to focus on controlling your pitch changes, both high and low, through airspeed, or in other words, through tongue movement. So any scaly patterns, chromatic scales are great, and any arpeggio patterns that start at the bottom with a low note and goes all the way up the top. Again, I've shared the link at the start of this session, so check it out and you'll be able to download it up until this stream finishes. How do you read tenor, clef on euphonium and alto? Basically like B flat treble, just add 2 sharps. So I read it like literally the way I read it. It's easier for me to read those clefs just because I'm originally trained as a B flat treble, but I read it as a B flat treble plus 2 sharps. What is the correct position to put the mouthpiece on the mouth? Depends on your teeth. Now, what you want to avoid ideally is your mouthpiece going too low, like this. So a good way to approach it would be putting the rim under your bottom lip, forming your embouchure, and closing the rim. That would be a good way to approach at least the position in terms of height. Now, in terms of centering it, it will depend on your teeth structure. Nobody has perfect teeth. If you'll notice me playing from the front, it's not perfectly in the center just because my teeth are not perfectly symmetrical. So see, it's a little bit more towards that side than it is in the center. So it's not as important as figuring out the height. You don't want this to happen. Huge no-no. That's how you would normally align it. But it will be hard to give you a more specific advice without seeing you play. I still don't own my own horn. I did play it. Okay, hey Matonizz, I'm nearing my last year in college as a music ed major. I still don't own my own horn, and I was thinking about the Yamaha Neo. I did play it at TMEA 2019, and I loved it. What do you think? If you loved it, go for it. It's a great bang for your buck. It's very, very affordable. It's a good euphonium, and it has certain downsides. I'm not a big fan of ergonomics of that instrument. Fantastic centering. Now the sound is, again, it has quite a few low frequencies. For my taste, it's quite hard to blend in band environment, and it's just harder to change the color of a tone. I like the 842 Yamaha a bit better, but it's a great bang for your buck. It's a great euphonium. If you loved it, then no doubt about it, get it. It's a very reliable instrument that has a great longevity, especially with all the replacement parts being very, very accessible, not only in the United States, but in Europe, which makes the repair costs cheap in case that happens, plus a great warranty that comes along with Yamaha instruments. Is the live stream going to be uploaded after? Yes, my articulation has been heavy lately and way could lighten up. I kind of answered that question through targeting the speed. That's the same thing. You need to decrease the range of motion. Start with short groups of one note, da 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 da, and track that with metronome. Start it a little slower and track it with a metronome. Try to add a couple of beats with every single time you repeat the scale from top to bottom. That would be a quick advice. You can always structure that better because I squeezed the answer in a pretty quick fashion, but that would be the main conception. What is the correct? What is a good school for? What is a good school for a master degree for either conducting or music education? I read that one. It's very also great youth instructor to help become a great player. Again, if you're ever interested in joining my studio, check Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, or you can get in touch with me through my email. I'll be able to provide more detail. Other than that, if you're looking for specifically education or a conducting degree, I know there's Atlanta, Georgia. There's a university there. Bloomington, Indiana. I'm not exactly sure whether they do conducting degrees, but that's a good university. And Texas, of course. What is it? What's a good way to get rid of excess tongue tension? Okay, so there's a way you can massage your tongue and help it to relax. So take your thumb, find a little spot under your chin. It's almost like a little hole there. So, and if you press on it, you'll notice that it's hard to control your tongue. It almost like kills with a tongue movement. But that's a muscle that controls your tongue. Push it in and do circular movement, almost like a deep tissue massage. So do 20 slow circles. It will help you to relax the tongue. Also, practicing it. So the more practicing you do, the more efficient your tongue movement will become. But to release the tension, that will be doing some massaging. That would be a great idea. How long have you been playing? For, I believe, either 21 years or 22. So a little over 2 decades now. I saw the guitar in your room. Do you know how to play it? Yes, I do know how to play it, and that's my little hobby. Can you please post the link again? Yes, I will post the link right now. Okay. Okay, let me quickly check in on the YouTube just to see how we're doing. Okay. Please post the... Okay. Okay, let me repost the link for the exercises. Okay. Oh, I already did that, so I just realized I already posted it. Okay, let's continue with the questions. Okay, where's my second window? Oh, it's right here. Are there any good solo songs for only free valve euphonium to practice? Yes, practice the trumpet book. Just find an Arbin pieces. They're free on IMSLP, and that's what I used to do when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I didn't have a great euphonium, so that's what I used to do. Practice a bunch of trumpet pieces. Do you have any weaknesses you're working on? Plenty, and I'm working on them every single time. I'm pretty balanced nowadays with all my skill set, but I always, every single day, I grind on every single basic. I try to get better at everything every single day, 365 days a year, every single day. So, specific weaknesses. I don't think there are specific areas that are like significantly worse than the others. Again, I think I managed to develop a pretty level skill set, but again, I'm working on improving everything. What sheet music? Check the links in the chat, my friend. Posted it at the beginning of the chat and recently. Brazil. Greetings from Poland. Hello, friend. Heavier crank on marching euphoniums. I've tried some marching euphoniums, but not an expert on it. Okay. Okay, what's the best way? Can you show me how to hold the euphonium in a more comfortable position, because I seem to be having difficulties as my right hand wrist tends to hurt a lot. Please show me the best way to hold it. Okay, got some good and bad news. Good news is I'll show you the most comfortable way might not be the correct way of holding it. That's the problem. Ergonomics of euphonium are generally not great. So this is what you normally need to be thinking when you're figuring out your posture. First of all, keeping your neck straight. You don't want your neck bent like this. Keep your neck straight. Keep your posture upright. And then bring your mouthpiece in, plugged in euphonium. And whatever position that ends, that's going to be ideal position. So, posture upright, neck straight. That's the posture I'm using now. There's a device that can help you with that. It's called Ergo Brass. So you'll be able to hold your instrument by putting it on the chair. And that's the one I've been using recently. Comfortable way would be putting all the weight on your left hand, but you will have to end up adjusting the mouthpiece position, which is not great for your playing. So again, the most comfortable position might not be the correct position for you. So try experimenting with some support system. Again, Ergo Brass, ERGO Brass, ERGO Brass. Check it out. It's a little pricey. It's close to $200, but it's well worth it. So you should check it out. I haven't consistently practiced for a while now. My tone is absolutely terrible. I had finally gotten rid of that high school tone, but now it's back. Any way to get rid of it faster? Yeah, I addressed this. I addressed recovery after layoff at the beginning of the stream. So check it out. Rewind a little bit, or whenever I upload it on my YouTube, you'll be able to rewind it. Yeah, I addressed this issue in quite a bit of detail. So. Is playing euphonium a hobby, or do it as a full-time job? Definitely full-time job. Well, now it's been all the musicians and most of the people around the world. There have been postponed concerts and all the activities. So it's my normal regular job, but I guess now I'm gonna be a full-time streamer. That's my new job for upcoming month. We'll see. I'll be uploading more content. So I have a question. I have kind of beat up horns, so when I try to get in lower register, but when I try, I can't play the notes in between pedal and F below the staff. Is that the instrument or me? No way of knowing unless I actually get to see or try the instrument, and that's the honest answer.